Okay. So what I wanted to describe here is how to use a plugin, an add-on that I wrote for Blender that allows you to work more easily with facial animation capture files exported by Brekel Pro Face 2. I hope I'm pronouncing Mr. Jasper's Brekel's last name correctly, but he'll forgive me hopefully if I'm messing it up. So let's take a look at a BVH motion capture file that's exported by the Brekel motion capture program. And just so you know, I'm looking, or you are looking here at Blender 2.77a. The plugin that I'm going to demonstrate here has been tested on 2.72 and 2.77a, and I'm assuming that it probably works for everything in between, but I haven't gone to the trouble of checking them for everything in between. 2.77a is the most recent version as of when I'm recording this. Okay, so BVH motion capture files. Let's take a look at what Brekel gives us. So we're going to go down to import, and I haven't added any additional plugins here. These are all the standard importers that come for motion capture. So here we go, and let's go to where I have one ready to go. Here we go. Okay, so you may ask, where is it? It is, let's go see if we can find it. So there it is. Now you'll notice that it doesn't look at all like a face. In fact, it looks a bit like a face if you use your imagination. We'll look at that in a second. But what you see here is an armature in space, displaced quite a distance from its origin. The origin's way over here. Here's the armature. This distance represents the distance of, well, my face actually, from where the Kinect was positioned. So when the motion capture data is captured, it also includes the distance from the Kinect in the motion capture file, and that's reflected by this distance between the armature and its origin here. That's fine, that's not a big deal. And let's just take a look at what we've got here. There we go, isn't that cool? So what is actually happening here? So we have some animation that's built in. And let me see, it seems to have stopped there, so it's a little shorter than the default. There it goes to about, what, say 180. So let's just fix that up. 180 is where the motion capture data stops. Okay, so that'll repeat now. What have we got? It's pretty cool, actually. You can sort of see, if you look at it, first of all, it's rotating around with the rotation of my head and my neck. You see sort of this strange sort of star-shaped thing in the center. And clearly some lip-like thing going on down here. So this stuff in the middle are the actual points on the face that the Kinect has done motion capture on. And so all those individual points are captured, and they're reflected by this strange sort of configuration of bones in this armature that reflects the individual points. Now, one can choose to use this center set of bones here to do your to transfer this to a mesh, for example, and use this to animate a mesh, the face mesh. However, I've chosen not to do that. This requires binding this armature, or an armature like it, to the facial mesh, and this animates all the individual points, corresponding to the weights you've associated with all those bones. That's a lot more detail than I really want. What I'm interested in is the other bones that you see here. This simplifies facial animation a little bit, not as much control, but completely adequate for the kind of thing I want to do. And these individual bones on the side here represent the displacement of facial shape keys. So there's a different bone along here for all the different face keys on the right and left of the face, and we'll take a look at what those look like on a facial mesh in a second. But one other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that these bones are just rotating about their relative x-axes. There's no other, for these ones that represent shape key, they are only rotating about the x-axis, and that rotation is meant to represent the displacement of the shape key value for the face. So we're going to be ignoring two things. We're going to be ignoring these this sort of central alternative bones that represent the individual offsets of points on the face, because again, that's more detail than I need. And we're just going to be concentrating on these ones behind the armature, or behind these the ones in the center that represent the shape key displacements. The other thing we're going to ignore from my perspective is the head rotation, because from the workflow that I use, I get the head rotation from body motion capture, not from face motion capture. So all I'm interested in is actually what's going on in the face, and my body motion capture handles head, neck and head rotation and so on. All right, so let's take a look at what we want to do next. So what we want to do is use this armature here, and we want to use the X rotations of these individual bones to drive facial shape keys. So the workflow that I use is that I'll do a motion capture with Brekel, I'll import the BVH associated with that, and I'll save that as a separate file. And that way I can build up, for each separate file, I have sort of an asset for a particular type of animation, a particular take that I want to use, and I can keep a whole series of files with all the individual facial takes, the animation for various takes that I want to do for faces. And then I can pull those in, I can pull the animation in, the individual animations in, and add them to a scene. What I'm going to show you is a way to support that workflow using the Brekel animations. So we have here obviously some animation too, and let's take a look. So not only do we have the armature is animated, and if we were to go over here and take a look in our dope sheet, there is all our animation. And we have animation for all those central points. Those are called face joints. Again, we're ignoring those things. And then down here near the bottom, way down near the bottom, you'll see also animation for shape keys. That's the other bones that we saw. And there's about 20 of those, I think, with Brekel Face Pro. So you'll see some here like brow up on the left side, brow up on the right side, brow down on the left side, and so on. And these are just rotations. That's all we need to capture. And in fact, the only rotation of any interest to us is the X rotation. The Y and the Z are all 0 for everything that's been imported here. So it's the X rotation that matters. Okay, so I bet you're all interested to see how we go from this to a face. So let's go find us a face, and I have a face right here, fortunately. This is a nice mesh that Brekel provides in his FBX exporter, and I've got another tutorial plan to show you a little bit about how that one works. But the BVH format is really great, I think, because the BVH, going just back to that for a second here, the BVH format is ideal for doing retargeting with. So the idea is that you can have all of these motion captures, BVH motion captures with their animation and their armatures, and then you can apply them to any character that has a armature of the type that is exported here by Brekel. So what I'm going to show you how to do is how to take this armature, associate it with a facial mesh, and then also associate various animations with that armature in a way that allows you to drive the shape keys that we've defined for the facial mesh. So let's go back to our facial mesh, which is right here. Okay, so we don't have much in this scene right now. It is nothing more than our mesh, and camera and things. Okay, and so what do we want to do? Well, actually, before we do anything, I want to point out that this thing's been pre-rigged with a bunch of shape keys. Okay, so here they all are, and it's important to realize that, you know, if you're going to be using the Brekel motion capture, then you have to have, and you're going to be using the shape key approach, which is what I'm showing you here, then it's important that the shape keys you define for your mesh are named identically to the ones that Brekel exports. And that's what you see here. You'll see 20 shape keys, you know, jaw right, lip stretch L, lip stretch, and I can even show you how these things, you know, look. This is a lip stretch on the right side. There it is, stretching on the right side. Let's see if we can get something that looks a little bit more, yeah, let's see, jaw open. Yeah, this one's a little bit more obvious. There we go, right? So these all have to be defined by you or by somebody who's a very good friend of yours who likes doing this sort of thing. And once that's done, then you're all set to do the first thing. And this is kind of an initial step you have to do in order to start using Brekel motion captures. You have to bind these shape keys to a Brekel armature of the type we just looked at via drivers. So right now, none of these shape keys have drivers associated with them, but what my add-on does is it binds the facial mesh shape keys with the armature we're going to import in a second, and then defines drivers for all of those things. So that means that any animation of the armature is going to be translated into shape key animation. And you only have to do that once for a given character. Once you've bound an armature, and that's the unique armature for your character, for your face mesh for that character, then that's a one-time operation. After that, you can start pulling in individual animations that you've captured with Brekel to your heart's content, and just kind of add them to the armature's animation suite using the NLA editor or whatever you want. And you're set to go. So what I'm going to show you is just this kind of one-time operation you do on your character's mesh, and then you're good to go for working with animation subsequently. Okay, so let's do that. So what we want to do is bring in an armature to bind to this face, and it's going to be our Brekel armature that we were just looking at. So I'm going to do that via append. And let's see, that's in our animation file that we were just looking at. Okay, and you have the option of importing the individual, armature itself, but that requires, some understanding of linking objects to data blocks and things, and I don't want to get into that right now, but that does work. I've done it before. What we're going to do instead is just bring in the armature at the object level. So that's this thing here. That's our armature that we were just looking at in the previous file. And let's bring that in. And so there it is there, but where is it in our picture? Let's see. Oh yes, there it is. Okay. And it's also brought in, there it is, yeah, with this little face. It's also brought in its animation with it. Which is fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. We can disconnect the animation from it if we want and substitute a different one later. But this is just going to be useful for seeing a couple of other things, having some canned animation ready to go. Okay, so I just changed the limit on the animation to 180 frames again. And so right now, clearly our face is not animated because there's no relationship between the animated armature and our face. So let's set up that relationship now, and that's where using my add-on comes to play. The add-on is currently not installed because I wanted to show you how to do that for those of you who are unfamiliar with installing add-ons. So to do that, you got to go to the web and find my add-on. So I'll include in the comments for the video a link to where you can find this thing, but it's hosted on GitHub. It's free, of course. That's the way it should be. And I've got another, I've got a couple of plugins as of this video. Right now I'm talking about this first one, the drivers one, but I'll have another video coming up to talk to you about how to work with the FBX one. And that's another plugin related to the face motion capture, but it deals with working with the FBX exports from Brekel instead of the BVHs. So let's take a look at this. So what you want to do is bring up the file itself and then go to raw mode. So there is the plugin. It's not very long at all. It's just, you know, a little bit of Python here. And we want to download this thing. So let's download it. Okay, now we're going to go back to Blender. We're going to go to our face, and here's how you do it. So we want to go to User Preferences. It doesn't really matter where you go, but I just have the animation here selected to show you that it's not currently installed. It doesn't matter where you start, but you want to hit this Install from File. We want to find our Downloads file, wherever that is. Gosh, there we go. And animation, there it is. Is that the latest one? Hopefully it is. Okay. And we're going to install that from File. Okay, then you have to do one more thing. You also have to, so it's installed, but you also have to sort of enable it by clicking that little check mark there. Okay, so now we've got it going. And so the next thing we want to do is we want to associate the two. So we click on the object that has the shape keys defined. So that's our face. And then we click on the armature last. So we shift click and select that. So now both the armature and the face are selected. The armature is selected last. It's the last thing you want to select is the armature. And now we want to run the plugin. So I hit the space bar to bring up the plugin selector. I don't know what they call this thing. And we look for the word Brekel, and there it is, create Brekel driver. So we hit that, and you'll see up here 20 drivers added to base. Okay, so back, you'll notice now that our face, all these drivers now are in purple, or all our shape keys are in purple. And that indicates that drivers have been defined for them, and there weren't drivers defined for them before. And let's just take a look what happens now. So if we start up our animation, haha, the face is moving very, very quickly too. That's because I think when I did the motion capture, I did it at a low frame rate. So let's adjust that. I think Blender's default is, yeah, 24. So let's bring that down to, I think I did it at 15 for this one. Can't remember for sure, but let's change it to 15. It should look a little bit more reasonable. Yeah, okay, that looks more reasonable. Okay, so what actually has happened here, those of you who are familiar with drivers probably know very well what's happened here, but oh yeah, I just actually, before I show you the drivers, let me point out that, you know, you'll see the armature rotating about. That's the head and neck animation. That's part of the animation for the armature. However, as I said before, I'm not interested in that. All I'm trying to capture is the shape key animation from the armature, so you know, you don't see the face mesh moving around at all. And I get that information from my body motion capture, which is a separate tutorial. Okay, so let's take a look at, keep that there, and take a look at some of the aspects of the, you know, the model we've got here. So here, let's take, there's our dope sheet. Yeah, so remember, the animation itself is defined for the armature. It's not defined for, there it is, right? There's the animation for the armature. There's no direct animation, there's no keyframing that's going on for our face mesh. Instead, we're using the armature animation, the rotation of these individual bones here, to as input to the drivers that we defined for our face shape keys. And it's those drivers that basically map the rotation of the bones in our armature to shape key values. So let's look at our graph editor. And the graph editor right now is showing the animation of the armature. Let's go and select our face. Now our face isn't showing anything because there, as I said, there's no animation defined for it. However, if we look at the drivers, and let's just look at a particular driver. Let's look at, I don't know, eye closed, actually. So these are all, I don't know, a quick way to sort of disable all of these things. So you kind of have to sweep through them here. Let's just look at, say, eye closed. Okay. So this is the view of the driver. And the driver basically, you know, this is a graph, a line here that takes a value from a particular bone. In this case, we're only interested in the eye closed value. And there is a bone associated with that, and we should be able to find that by looking here in our armature. So let's look at our armature. Here are all the face joints, don't care about those, and we're looking for eye closed left. So there it is, and let's go to pose mode so we can see it. There it is. So there's our, oops, there it is. There's our bone, and you can see it's rotated, and that's for the eye closed left, the left eye closed. So the rotation of this thing is the input to the driver for our face. And if you were to rotate that, that would provide the input, and this line is providing a mapping to the displacement. So we have between 0 and 1 here on the y-axis, and that corresponds to the, let me see, where's our eye closed left here? Corresponds to the value that we currently see here for the eye closed on the left hand side. And in fact, you can see here, if we go down, I think, let's see, 73.9 degrees is what it currently says is the value of our bone displacement. If we go back over here and we click on this guy, is this the one? Yeah, there it is, and we take a look. Yeah, 73.9 is the rotation here. So that's being input back to our face, and then being translated to, what is that? Somewhere between, you know, say 0.7-ish. And yes, 0.7-ish is indeed what we're seeing here. So all this line does is provide a way of mapping from the rotation, x rotation, over to the slider value basically for our shape key. I also wanted to point out here that there are what they call interpolation keyframes for the driver. There's 3 of them in this case. 1, 2, 3. And these allow you to control the shape of this line. So, you know, right now it's a linear mapping from, you know, the 0 to 100 degree rotation of the bone to the 0 to 1 slider value for the individual shape keys. And so that's nice and linear. But if you want to change the relationship between input and output, you can you know, select one of these guys. It's got a Bezier handles on either side, so you can, you know, mess around with these and, you know, change how you want. And you can see the eye changing there, the left eye changing as we do that, because that's changing how we map between the two. So that, for those of you who want to mess around, so for example, if your eyes are staying more closed than open and you want to change that relationship, you can just, from the animation, then you can make that change here. I personally like driver-based animation because the changes you make here to the graph, to the interpolation keyframes, are going to be fixed across all animations. All actions that you have for your armature will be subject to any changes you make here. Whereas changes you make to the individual animations, like if I decided I wanted to change how this bone was animated, by actually changing the animation here, the keyframes here, than if I brought in another action with different animation. I'd have to, and I wanted to sort of keep the look, say my character always has a droopy eye, then I'd have to make those changes to the other actions that I bring in. Whereas by having a driver interpose itself between this animation and my shape keys, then I can just make the change to the driver mapping between the actions and the shape key values, and it's a one-time change that and it will be it'll apply across all actions. I don't know if that makes sense, but for those of you who like drivers, you'll understand what I'm talking about, and it's a nice way of doing things. Okay, let me see. Was there anything else I wanted to show? I guess the other thing I wanted to emphasize is that we brought in an animation with the armature here, and that's you aren't restricted to just use the animation you bring in with your armature. You can add additional animations to this armature, which result obviously in different animations for your face. So in the action editor here, you can see we have one animation. That's the animation that came when we imported our armature. It was associated with that as well. And we can go to the NLA editor, for example, and say, yeah, that's really great. I want to turn that into an NLA object. So there it is, right? But now I've got another Brekel motion capture for a face somewhere else, and let's just pretend that actually I don't have another one around, but I do have the same one from the one we imported before. So let me show you how that works. So we can actually go and say I want to pull in another animation from another Brekel motion capture. We can pop up here and say, oh yeah, here it is. It's in this animation file. In this case now, I only want the action. I don't need the armature because I've already done the work with the armature. The armature is already bound. But here's the animation I captured there, so I can bring that in. Now it's got the same name, but Blender's smart and will append a number to it so it doesn't interfere with the one that we've already got in there. And now you'll see we have this new one. This new action, right? And so how do we associate that new animation with our face? Well, we select our armature in the usual way, select the new action to go with that, and then when we run this thing, we're actually running the new animation we just imported, not the one that came with the original armature. So we actually have a second action here. And then we can say, oh yeah, that's really terrific, that looks good, and I want to add that after the fact. After the one that we got with the armature, I want to add this one. Whoops, I didn't mean to put that on a separate track. I meant to put that somewhere else. Let me see, I'm not sure if I'm familiar enough. Well, there we go. Okay, that's how you do it. So there, we have the first one, and then the second one, or the second one, and then the first one, it looks like. And they've been appended to one another. So you can stack them, or you can put them in sequences. It's the NLA editor gives you lots of flexibility. The other thing is, you don't have to be worried about changing the name of your armature. You can change it if you want to face armature or something like that. It doesn't break the relationship between the drivers and your face. That'll work fine. Okay, and you can even put this thing on a different layer because it's kind of ugly, right? Now you can, and it'll still work fine. In fact, there it is, right? And in fact, you can go a step further, and let's just bring that up so I can see it. There it is. Let's bring the layer so we make it visible again. You can even add it to your face object so that they're kind of connected, right? So we'll shift select the face, and then we'll parent them. You just do a regular parent, and now they're connected together so that if we, now they're both considered to be part of the same logical object, and we can go back to hiding the armature, and things will still work just fine in terms of the animation. So, right. So that's just a nice way to keep things nice and tidy. And you can do other things, like I typically delete the head animation keyframes from the actions because I don't need them. And I could potentially also take away all the face joint ones, but who knows, you guys might want to use those things. And they are imported, they're added there. I'm just not doing anything with them right now. So I think that's about all I wanted to show you. The other video for my other plugin basically talks about how to use the FBX export. What I've been talking about here is the BVH export from Brekel, but there's also an FBX export from Brekel, and how to do basically the same thing. In fact, to use the Brekel FBX export, you need to use another one of my add-ons that I will talk about, plus this one that we've just looked at. So understanding how this one works is helpful to understand how to work with the Brekel FBX export as well. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for listening. I hope this is helpful to you.